It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Believe me when I say we have a difficult time ahead of us. But if we are to be prepared for it, we must first shed our fear of it. I stand here without fear because I remember that I am here not because of the path that lies before me, but because of the path that lies behind me. I remember that for 100 years we have fought these machines. And after a century of war, I remember that which matters most. We are still here! Tonight, let us make them remember we are not afraid!
No fear here on Declare Your Independence. You know, one thing that I've been doing, we haven't spent enough time on what's going on with the people in Japan. We're working on that. We're getting some people, let it settle down, and we really want to do more on it. Last night, I did a special radio program with Robert Anderson. He's a very good friend of mine and one of the older activists when we were in our 20s, you know, young back in the early 90s. He and I had done a lot of things together, and he moved out by Palo Verde nuclear power plant because he's a supervisor out there in the fuel department. I remember 29 years he's been doing this. 4 of those years, he was on the USS Enterprise. So he got a up close and personal straddling the reactor kind of thing. Got a job out at Palo Verde, one of the latest, most high-tech, largest nuclear power plants in America. Now, he's one of the boys out there, and I wanted to have him kind of, you know, give us from inside the industry view on what's going on in Japan and should we be worried and what does it mean for the future of the nuclear power industry. But he really had a lot of concern for the people of Japan. And the reason is because, I mean, it's devastating what's happened. You see the videos, and we really haven't done it justice. I'm going to let it go for a while, and we'll go ahead and talk about it. But I asked George to stay over in the second hour a little bit to give him an opportunity to, you know, what we're looking to do. I would think as we get more into agorist-type living, we're insulated from a lot of these problems that will happen, a devastating thing in another country or in another state or remote from us, even in the same country here, how we can be insulated from the effects instead of having this homogenized society that we all must suffer. And when somebody does like Katrina, that we have people that, if allowed, would help. And we went through this. I remember we were covering it on the radio as Katrina was happening, and there were over 600 bass boats on the road going, knowing what they needed. They need people in boats to go save them from their rooftops. And what happened? FEMA and military with M16s on the road saying, turn around. You're not allowed. You're not allowed to help. We'll take care of it. We'll get Walmart, give us some water in this one place, and everybody get into the Superdome, and we'll take care of you. Promise, pinky swear. And how'd that work out? So I wanted, from that kind of perspective and just a human perspective, ask George, you know, what's your opinion of what's going on? Should we take from it? Should we be doing anything? You know, what do you think about it?
I don't know what we really can do other than maybe send money, because it's so far away and it's so the affected areas are so inaccessible. But I think the real takeaway here is the complete incompetency of governments and government-created corporations, to handle situations like this. They're just not accountable. The TEPCO, the electric company here that runs the reactors, has been hiding information. And, in the first place, just looking at it in a basic way, why did they put all those reactors on the Pacific side of Japan right next to that huge earthquake fault line? Who decided that? And who allowed them to put it there? That should be on the Sea of Japan side. Japan has a long history of earthquakes. Everybody knows this. I lived in Japan for 4 years. and earthquakes are just a fact of life. And so, not only just the decision of where to put it and how to run it, and the fact that they have 40 years of nuclear waste on site, 600,000 of these fuel rods just waiting for the water to leak away and start burning. Who allowed that to happen? And who is going to answer for this tremendous irresponsibility? It's government and government-created corporations that have really created this situation, allowed it to fester, and, because of the way they operate, we don't really have a way to hold them accountable. And the way nuclear power works, or at least a nuclear disaster has the potential to affect the whole world. There's no way to escape from it. It's simply shocking. It's just amazing how this has unfolded over the last few days.
You lived 4 years in Japan? Why?
Yeah. Why? I was bored in the U.S. I had a couple friends over there. And, I'm kind of an explorer by nature. I'm talking to you now from South America. So, I just wanted to go over there, see what it was like. The only thing I knew about Japan before that was World War II and the nuclear bombs and all that. So
you're in South America now? You got to tell me about that. You can't let that whiz by. Where at?
Yes, Medellin, Colombia.
Wow. What are you doing there?
It's so beautiful here. They call it the city of the eternal spring. A Colombian friend of mine, brought me here about 17 years ago, and I just loved it. And so I kept visiting, and after I was done in Japan, I came here and started working as an English teacher, and just couldn't leave. Got married, had my son here. It's so nice to explore outside of the U.S. because it really affects your view of the world. It's really educational.
We had Butler Schaefer in on Monday, and one of the things we're going to be talking about, he was a real inspiration in the living room, just chilling with the guys, and Nick and Drew got inspired by him, and we're going to be talking about it a little bit today. But in going around the world, that's one of the gentlemen that we're going to have, the Sovereign Man, a guy goes by the pen name Simon Black, and we put a lot of his stuff up on Freedom's Phoenix, and he's talking about traveling the world. And the one thing he said about Japan is, he goes, it used to have this stereotype of how expensive it was. And he was finding that when he went there here recently, just a month or two ago, that how comparative it was with the U.S. and Europe in the cost of things. And that's really come down. So the Japanese people, though, I want to ask you that question. The Japanese people, their culture, and they are kind of raised in this more collectivist mindset of duty to society. And I remember that becoming a big issue in the mid-'90s. I was interviewed by, it's kind of like their version of 60 Minutes on gun issues and so on. And the first thing I had to do is explain to them that we're a different culture here. Our government, it was solely supported on the promise that they are there to protect individual rights, and that the collective is not their primary concern. Where in Japan, they have a totally different mindset. How does that play into this?
Yeah, there's a mindset of kind of obedience, way too much obedience, conformity, because it's a very homogenous culture. And so it's very easy for things to go wrong, because you don't see a lot of people standing up and saying something is wrong when it's actually wrong. They have a saying, the nail that sticks up gets hammered down.
Yeah, we know that here.
Yeah, that is like a bedrock for their culture. So nobody stands up, or very rarely does anyone stand up and say, hey, something's wrong here, and we got to do something about it.
Well, the youth may be doing that. I remember there was an article on Freedom's Phoenix that was talking about, you free market guys, see now the free market and nuclear energy, they've done this, and look what happened, and so on. And Glenn Jacobs, a good libertarian friend of ours, he came out and he said, really, when has there been who would insure a nuclear power plant? Well, without government limits on liability, how the heck would they even do it unless they were able to convince someone that was investing in the insurance to make sure these things didn't happen? It's always freedom's the answer. What's the question? Well, a big freedom advocate, George Donnelly, it's been a pleasure spending time with you. And, now I know I can go back and talk to you about some other things.